Hi everybody, welcome back to Critical Mass. We're starting a little bit of a new series here on the channel where we're going to start talking and comparing about movies that have been redone. So old movie versus new movie, and which one did it better? And which one had better story, better acting? Will be hard to beat the special effects, but we'll see what happens in the series. We're going to tie all kinds of movies, and we're going to start off the first one with an old classic, War of the Worlds. So for those of you who may know or may not know, The War of the Worlds was based on Orson Welles' radio television show that he broadcasted live across America and didn't tell anybody it was a radio show. And a lot of people actually thought the United States was being invaded by aliens, to the point where people ran and got together and were arming themselves and creating militias overnight to protect their towns. And they actually had to stop the broadcast halfway through and say, everybody, it's just a radio show. We're not being invaded.
You know you have a successful show.
You know
when
that
people are doing that.
You're winning the argument and how realistic your show is if people are running around thinking we're being invaded. So we're going to compare. I think it's 1953, Mark, the original.
Yeah, 1953 was the original.
The original one. And then we're going to compare Tom Cruise's remake, which was the last War of the Worlds remake back in 2005. I believe. So, we watched them both. Quite different movies, but basically the same story in a lot of ways. So, what did you guys think?
Go ahead, Paul.
The first one, you know what? I didn't like it. Let's put all the special effects aside, because I understand that in the 50s you can't do what we expect them to do. But it was all based on the authorities. Like it's the scientists, it's the generals, it's showing lots of B-roll of what Americans really liked at the time, because they liked their war movies. It was just after the war, and they're showing B-roll of tanks and jeeps and soldiers and bombers. And then they try to tack on a love story in there, which I thought was really contrived. And then, of course, it has that War of the Worlds ending where it's just, oh, this is a bit of narration to tell you what happened.
So. And I'm going to both agree and disagree with you. The original did have, like you said, the scientists and the military generals and everything else. What I did like about the way they did this, though, was that it could have been the same attack in two different places in the States. Right, so if you're taking the 1953 version, that's how the military and the scientists were handling it at one part of the world, and then in another part of the world, the 2005 version, which is just some construction worker, that's how his family was dealing with the attack. And so globally, this could have been the same attack, and you could look at it that way.
Yeah, but does that mean that the first movie was good?
No, I do feel that the love story they put in there was contrived. The entire world is collapsing and falling apart, and he's church jumping to find her. Why is he going from church to church to church to look for her instead of, I don't know, he's one of the leading minds that can, help defend. Why isn't he doing that?
Except, don't forget, in this story, they did explain that they were taking all their testing equipment and moving it out of the harm's way, and the citizens rioted and tore all the equipment and all the notes and everything that they had taken and strewn them all over the place. They were completely worthless. Other people had been killed, and they had no scientist meeting area anymore, and they were by themselves.
Sure, but the love interest was somebody he had met 3 days ago.
True. No, the love story itself is contrived, but you're asking why was he not solving things? Because he was now by himself. All his things are gone. He was looking for her in the place that he knew that she would probably be, because she was a minister's daughter.
Yeah, I did feel, watching it though, right from the very beginning in the opening sequence, I felt this is a very fitting movie for us to be watching during a pandemic.
It's the end of the world, everybody.
Yeah, I saw some parallels there.
Yeah,
you can do that in a lot of movies nowadays, unfortunately.
Another thing I didn't like is, unlike other movies like Singing in the Rain or Spartacus, Zulu, I didn't care about anybody in this movie at all. Nobody. I didn't care about any of them to dust. What's that?
Well, you're a very selfish person.
It's true. But this movie didn't cure me of that.
This is true.
Now, one of the things you have to realize with this movie back then is it was one of the first movies that actually knocked off characters in its movies. Usually you have a group of people and they're around till the end. Here you only had two, the man and the woman. The general dies, the captain dies, the scientists die, everybody, her father dies, everybody was knocked off. You were not meant to draw parallels to their person. You were meant to draw parallels to what they were trying to do. The general, he was trying to, mount the defense with what he had, found out he couldn't stop them, tried to get his own people out of there, and he gets killed. The religious father, he thought that absolutely, we got to talk to these people. God will protect us. Even if they're aliens, that means, and they're advanced, that means they're more advanced to the creator than we are. And that was his beliefs. So you were meant to follow those kind of things back then, not the individuals and what they were going through, but their jobs, their reflections, and their thoughts, which for 1953 was groundbreaking back then.
I thought the dialogue was tragic, like so bad. They're just nonstop trying to sound smart and throwing out all these terms that often didn't even make sense. And it was like somebody who was in grade 9 trying to pretend they're a professor of astrophysics and writing a script. And I guess it was just painful to listen to.
So I guess the word force field had not been coined yet.
I didn't hear anything you guys just said.
I said, it's kind of like when I have to host you two guys.
And I said, I guess the word force field had not been coined yet.
Nope. No, but that was one of the only things in the movie I liked, was those little globes they put around as shields.
Yeah, and there are scenes in this movie you could see the string still in the background holding up the spaceship. So yeah, it was 1953. And if you think about it, though, this was based kind of like a horror movie or a Godzilla kind of movie. And back then, those kind of movies were always based on the scientists and the soldiers in all those movies. It wasn't individual people. So how did you like Tom Cruise's version? Mark, you're up first.
Okay. I really enjoyed it. In fact, because I didn't remember watching it in 2005. And I know I did. I just didn't remember really anything about it. And so when I started watching it, I was expecting to see the original players and those parts being played from the 1953 version. But no, he's a construction worker or just working on a loading dock, sort of a deadbeat dad character. And I was immediately put off right away, thinking, okay, well, they're going to tell a completely different story. I was pleasantly surprised that the story sort of followed the same. I mean, obviously, the way that the aliens were delivered to Earth and everything else was different, but the story itself sort of played out the same. And it was just different people's reactions to how they would deal with this kind of a scenario. And I really enjoyed it.
Well, I can't remember liking this movie back when I saw it the first time as much as I did watching it again. Like, I loved watching it a second time. I thought everything about it was just so intense. Like, yeah, you have the new effects, for the modern age. Yeah, they're good at that. But the emotion in every scene, the tension in every scene, the panic that the whole world is going through, the dread, it was just so visceral that from beginning to end of the movie, you're just held captive. And again, it ends with the stupid, abruptness of War of the Worlds and the narration explaining it. But all the way through, like, you see Tom Cruise's character, his terror at not being able to take care of his children. He doesn't know what to do, but he manages. He somehow keeps them together and alive, and he does it.
Except his son.
What's that?
Except his son.
Well, yeah. Well, there's story elements there that take care of that, but he's not a hero in this. He's just a regular dad trying to make it through this tough time, and it was gripping, I think.
And you could actually see the PTSD in this guy as he's going through each of these things that he's seeing. He's seeing people being literally incinerated in front of him, and he's got ashes all over him from these people that were incinerated. And he's just looking at himself in he's got PTSD. He's freaked out, but he pulls it together.
Now, I too am a big Tom Cruise fan, and I thought his portrayal of this particular character in these situations was really, really good. I wanted to slap Dakota Fanning 1,000 times watching this movie. Shut up, stop screaming. Why are you a little in this movie? The whole time. Like, there was no point.
She's 11 years old. Give her a break.
At no point in this movie was I going, Dad, save her. I was saying, let her go. It's a much more peaceful truck van ride. Like that's
as annoying.
The whole thing of hide your eyes. She just saw floating bodies floating through the river and everything like this. Yet he's gonna hide her eyes while he closes the door behind him and goes into the room after the guy in the house. I mean,
as annoying as she was as a character, she was a brilliant actress in this movie.
Yes, but they made her be a completely annoying person in this movie. And even her son was annoying.
She's 11.
He was.
And you know that there are completely annoying people in the world.
Yes, there are. I didn't want to watch them though. In this movie, it was taking me out of the movie every time she just started screaming.
But if the story was about a dad taking his perfect, easy to deal with children across the country in this tragic time, it wouldn't have been as intense.
No, but I would not have minded some other character trait for her other than being hard, problematic, arguing, and screaming.
Well, she was allergic to peanut butter.
Yeah, because no child cannot be something. Something, right? In every movie, you either have to be, she needs her insulin, or, she's diabetic and she needs it.
At least there was some character development.
But Tom Cruise's portrayal, like when the alien first arrives and bursts through the ground, like just the very first shake, and they all kind of stand up after, and they kind of laugh to each other as if, wow, this is kind of crazy what's going on, is kind of how people would react at the beginning. What I really didn't like is at one point when the alien comes up and it's standing up there and it's looking down, they didn't have pictures of people with cell phones and everything. They had one guy with like a camera, a little Instamatic camera. He was taking selfie things like this, and I'm going, didn't they have cell phones back then?
No, they didn't have smartphones back then.
No, not as widely used as they are now.
It just seems so out of place now, you know what I mean? I guess we've grown up with it too much. It's just, there's such commonplace now. It just looked ridiculous that why did this one guy have a camera with him?
Little camcorder.
I liked see in the first one, I hated how it was all about the authorities and the soldiers and the government agencies. I really liked how this was brought right down to the individual going through the experience. I thought that was more of I could relate to it more than the first movie.
Yeah, well, it was meant to do that, right? It was meant to bring it into a person. What would happen to you if this was going on? Where the first one was about the story of the invasion. This one was about the story of Tom Cruise and his family during the invasion. So they did a spin.
And just when you think that, we've seen everything, there's nothing that they could throw on the film that would make me feel any kind of, this terror is insurmountable. There's nothing that they could do. But in this movie, they did it. I thought there was nothing that could beat these giant robots. Everybody's going to die. Well, I didn't think that because I knew how War of the Worlds ended. But they did put those big monsters in there successfully. I felt dread at watching them invade the cities.
Yeah, and they did throw in they're feeding on the people's blood for their ships. And that was brand new from the original story. That was never there, obviously. The whole point of the grenade thing there, a little bit. If he had grenades, why wasn't he using them well before this?
He was.
He just found them.
No, the soldier had them though.
Well, he took them off the soldier's belt.
Yeah.
And he still had them. Now he threw one at the outside, but the force field stopped it, so it detonated way too early. The only way that he was able to get any traction is because he stuffed it up inside of the alien, of the machine, and so it blew up inside, freeing them all.
It just looked like, okay, how do we get him out of here now? We'll do this kind of thing. It just one of those plot points I thought needed a little bit more work.
I think that's overly critical.
I think that you were probably doing something else while this was playing in the background and you missed this.
No, I've seen this movie more than once, obviously.
At least 5 times a year.
No, I don't watch this one that often. This is not one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies. I will say that. It just didn't do it for me that much in the theaters. Like I said, it was okay, but it wasn't to me one of his standout films.
Yeah, I enjoyed it much more watching it the second time around than I did way back then. I don't know why, but I would have rated it back then maybe a 7. Now I give it like an 8.
Now, maybe it's because you're stuck at home and you're so bored, you're just looking for something different to watch on TV.
No, because you guys made me watch 9 hours of movies, and I was kind of tired of watching movies.
Now, which one did you watch first, the older version or the new version?
The older version.
Me too.
If you didn't like the first one, it might taint you to like the second one even more. But there you go. That's a little bit about War of the Worlds, Tom Cruise's version versus the old classic based on Orson Welles' TV play and, well, radio show. I didn't mind. I'll tell you, as a younger kid back then, War of the Worlds scared me. But those were pretty amazing, like the of the thing coming, the arm coming through the window and things like that. That scared the heck out of an 11-year-old kid and a 9-year-old kid back then, because that was basically a horror movie to us. So I can imagine, that's probably a lot of why it became so popular as well. Not to mention the history of the radio show to go along with it. So I do have a fond little bit of my memory and heart for it. But is it a great movie? No, never was. But I'll still put it up there as a groundbreaking film, considering what it did with the radio show and stuff like that. So let us know what you guys think. Which one did you prefer? Tom Cruise's version, the original version, or have you even listened to the radio show? I've actually listened to the radio show once I found out this was based on a radio show when I was younger. And quite frankly, I have no idea how that scared people back then when I listened to it, but apparently it did. A much simpler time, I guess, from what we are used to. And yeah, let us know. Also, give us some suggestions. What movies should we review that original movie, remake? And don't give us ones where the new one is way worse than the original one. Try and get one that we can compare hits to hits kind of thing to see just which one we prefer nowadays, especially with the different age groups that we're talking about. So hope you liked the video. If you did, why not check out some of our other content down here below. And until next time, stay safe, stay inside. We'll see you on the channel.